Ilara 7 was quiet, always quiet. A dusty, red-brown planet orbiting a pale star. It had no wildlife, no storms, and barely any atmosphere. But under its surface, something had been waiting. Lyra Chen stood inside the main excavation dome, staring at the strange black object half buried in the stone floor. It was smooth, shaped like a disc with faint glowing lines running across it like veins. No one had seen anything like it before. Lyra was a xenobiologist, not an engineer or a linguist, but her instincts told her this wasn't just some ancient piece of debris. It was alien, ancient, possibly dangerous. Around her, the other scientists worked quietly. A soft hum of scanners and data processors filled the dome. Ilara 7 only had a small research outpost, a dozen people at most, with Lyra in charge of the dig team. She took a breath, crouched next to the artifact, and placed her gloved hand on its surface. It was cold at first, then warm, then, va. The artifact pulsed, a deep, low vibration, like a distant drum. Every machine in the dome flickered. The lights dimmed, then returned. The pulse echoed once more and stopped. Lyra stood up slowly, heart pounding. That had never happened before. It responded to touch. She rushed to the communication panel near the dome's exit. "Callan," she said, through the station-wide comms. "Get to the dome, now. Bring Yara." 2 minutes later, Callan, a young engineer, and Yara, the station's AI systems specialist, arrived. It pulsed again, Lyra explained, pointing at the artifact. "It reacted to contact. This isn't just a fossil, it's active, or semi-active." Yara scanned it again. "Energy signature is increasing, slowly. Could be charging." Callan frowned. "Charging for what?" Lyra didn't answer. She didn't know. Back in the command center, she reviewed the data. The artifact had released a low-frequency signal. It wasn't just a vibration. It was a transmission, complex, repeating, and aimed outward. It had sent a message. But to whom? There was no time to analyze it properly. Protocol was clear. Any unknown alien technology showing signs of activity must be reported. Lyra opened the emergency channel and composed a short message. SOS. Ilara 7 Research Station. Discovered alien device. Active. Unknown function. Possible first contact. Immediate support required. She hesitated only a second before transmitting it. Her message would take at least a few days to reach Union space, maybe longer. Then she waited. Days passed. The artifact continued to pulse every few hours. It began to hum softly, too low to be heard unless you were near. Some of the crew had trouble sleeping. Lights flickered more often. Batteries drained faster. The outpost still functioned, but something felt off. On the 4th day, Yara ran into the cafeteria, tablet in hand. "A ship's approaching. Not from the Union. It's a Deathworlder signal." Lyra stood slowly. "Are you sure?" Yara nodded. "ID reads Black Echo. No known Union affiliation." Lyra's chest tightened. The Deathworlders, a rogue human faction, genetically enhanced soldiers from extreme planets, survivors of toxic worlds, trained for high-risk missions. The Union feared them. Some called them mercenaries. Others called them monsters. They weren't known for helping. The ship entered orbit within the hour. No reply to hails, just silence. Then a dropship detached and began descending toward the surface. Lyra gathered the crew in the hangar. "I didn't request them," she said. "We don't know what they want. Stay calm. Let me speak first." The dropship landed. The airlock hissed open. 6 figures stepped out, tall, armored, silent. Their suits were matte black, their visors unreadable. They moved like hunters, efficient, alert, dangerous. The one in front removed his helmet. He had short, dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to see too much. "I'm Commander Reyes," he said flatly. "We received your distress signal." Lyra stepped forward. "We asked for aid, scientific support, not soldiers." Reyes didn't blink. "You found something dangerous. That means us." Lyra didn't respond. She couldn't. Her gut told her that everything had just changed. Reyes turned to his team. "Secure the perimeter. Lock down the artifact. Full control of the facility begins now. Callan took a step forward. You can't just take over. A Deathworlder raised a weapon, and Callan backed off. Lyra looked at Reyes. What are you planning to do with it? He stared at her. Whatever keeps us alive. No more words were needed. The Deathworlders hadn't come to help. They'd come to take control of the artifact, of the outpost, of everything. Lyra clenched her jaw. She wasn't going to let that happen. The Deathworlders moved through the research base like shadows, silent, cold, and fast. Within hours of landing, they had locked down the main entrances, sealed off the artifact chamber, and posted armed guards at every access point. The scientists of Ilara 7 watched from a distance, uneasy. Their peaceful station now felt like a military outpost. Dr. Lyra Chen stood in the command center, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the security feeds. She saw Commander Reyes giving orders without hesitation. His team obeyed without question. They moved with perfect discipline, scanning every room, setting up equipment, tapping into the station's systems. Reyes didn't knock. He walked straight into the command center. Status of the artifact, he asked. Lyra didn't hide her frustration. Still stable, no changes since the last pulse. Good, he said, stepping closer to the main console. My team will run a deeper analysis. You and your people will remain observers. This is our base, Lyra said firmly. We discovered the artifact, and you're not trained for this kind of contact, Reyes replied. His voice was calm but final. My orders are to secure and neutralize any threat. Until further notice, this facility is under Deathworlder authority. Lyra looked him in the eye. We sent an SOS for help, not a takeover. Reyes didn't blink. Help arrived, just not the kind you were hoping for. She wanted to argue, to push back, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. For now, they had the power, the weapons, the control. By the next day, the atmosphere inside the base had changed. The scientists stayed mostly in their quarters, or the mess hall. The Deathworlders rarely spoke. They communicated with hand signals, short phrases, or encrypted comms. Lyra tried to keep her team focused, encouraging them to continue their own studies away from the artifact. But it was hard. Every hallway felt colder. Every room felt watched. Callan approached her during breakfast. This is insane, he whispered. They act like we're the threat. Lyra nodded. They're afraid of what we found, or what it might do. I saw them loading something into the artifact chamber, he added. Heavy gear. Could be explosives. Lyra's stomach sank. She hadn't been allowed near the artifact since the takeover. If they were preparing to destroy it, she stood quickly and left the cafeteria, heading for the lab. If she couldn't access the artifact, she could at least review the data they had already collected. Later that evening, Reyes found her alone in the lab. He didn't knock, just walked in and stood across the table from her. You're still working, he said. I don't take orders from you, Lyra replied without looking up. He gave a slight nod, as if expecting that answer. What do you think it is? She paused. I think it's a signal device. Maybe a beacon. It's not a weapon. You're sure? No. But nothing about it reads as hostile. It's communicating, not attacking. Reyes stepped closer. You think it's a message? I know it is, and you're afraid of it. He leaned forward, voice low. I've seen what happens when messages like that are answered. Entire colonies lost. Ships pulled into gravity wells. AI systems turned against their crews. We don't wait to find out. We act. Lyra met his gaze. Not all messages are threats. Some are invitations, or warnings. If we destroy this, we might destroy a chance to learn something incredible. Reyes looked away for a moment. Or we might save lives. The room was quiet. The hum of computers was the only sound between them. Finally he said, Stay out of the artifact chamber. That's not a request. He turned and walked out. Lyra sat back, staring at the screen. She knew now, he was planning to end it, blow it up, erase the risk, but also erase the chance. She wasn't going to let that happen. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She paced her quarters, mind racing. She had to act carefully. The Deathworlders were trained for sabotage, infiltration, and combat. She was a scientist, but she had knowledge, she had reason, and she had a mission. The artifact pulsed again. This time it was stronger. The lights flickered across the base. Everyone felt it, even the Deathworlders. In the darkness of her room, Lyra whispered to herself, "It's talking, and someone out there is listening." The days grew heavier on Elara 7. The Deathworlders had full control, and the once quiet research base now felt like a war zone waiting to ignite. But beneath the surface, beneath the fear and tension, something else was rising, something from the artifact. Dr. Lyra Chen had been banned from the artifact chamber, but she hadn't stopped studying it. She worked late into the night in the secondary lab, reviewing data from before the Deathworlders' arrival. She combed through pulse readings, energy wave patterns, and electromagnetic fields. The artifact wasn't just active, it was waking up. She noticed something strange. The pulses weren't random. They followed a pattern, a repeating sequence that grew more complex over time. It was math, then language, symbols forming structures. The artifact was sending a message, and not just into space. It was sending it to them. Lyra leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the filters. The lines began to take shape. First symbols, then diagrams, then a sequence that looked very much like DNA. Her heart raced. This wasn't just a broadcast. It was data, information, maybe even knowledge. She stored the findings on a separate encrypted drive and hid it in her locker. If Reyes found out she was accessing restricted files, she'd be removed, or worse. The next morning, Lyra confronted Yara in the control room. The young systems specialist had remained silent since the Deathworlders arrived, keeping her head down. But Lyra needed help. "I need access to the artifact's live output feed," Lyra whispered. Yara hesitated. "That line's cut. Only Reyes has it now. Then help me get around it." Yara glanced at the camera in the corner of the room. "They're watching everything." Lyra nodded. "Then we don't leave a trail." Yara finally nodded. She didn't ask why. She already knew. That night, with Yara's help, Lyra tapped into the feed from the artifact's chamber, using an old diagnostic channel that hadn't been patched in years. On her screen, she saw the live data stream and the energy signature. The artifact's pulses were no longer just steady vibrations. They were evolving, adapting. It was almost as if it was learning how to communicate better. Each burst of energy carried more data than the last. Lyra decoded the signals through a basic linguistic AI model. What she saw made her freeze. Greetings. One word. Clear, deliberate, and human-readable. She blinked. Then another message came. "Do not fear. We remember." Her hand trembled. These were not random patterns. The artifact was intelligent, or at least programmed by something that was. It had been waiting for someone to find it. And now that someone had. The next day, as Lyra moved through the base, she noticed the change in atmosphere. Tension ran deeper. Deathworlders were moving faster, speaking less. There were more guards posted. Something was happening. In the mess hall, Callan slid into the seat across from her and whispered, "They're prepping explosives." "Confirmed." "I saw crates marked with demolition codes." Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Reyes wasn't waiting. He was planning to destroy the artifact soon. She stood up. "We don't have time." She found Reyes in the command center. He stood over a table, looking at a map of the station. His face was as calm as ever, cold and unreadable. "You're going to destroy it," Lyra said, walking in without asking. Reyes didn't look up. "It's a risk. I don't take chances with risks." Lyra stepped closer. "It's not a weapon. It's a message. It's trying to communicate." He glanced at her. "Or lure us in, and then wipe us out." "I've seen the signal. It says, 'Do not fear.' That's what any trap would say." Lyra clenched her fists. "You don't know what it is. You're acting out of fear." "No," Reyes said, standing straight. "I'm acting out of survival." He walked past her and stopped at the door. "I've seen what happens when you trust the unknown. Whole worlds lost. Populations vanished. This thing, it could be the beginning of something we can't stop." Lyra stared at his back. "Or it could be the beginning of something we can finally understand." Reyes left without answering. That evening, the base trembled. A stronger pulse echoed through the walls. Lights flickered, and systems briefly shut down. The artifact's hum was louder now, constant, like a soft, distant song. Everyone felt it. The Deathworlders prepared their gear. The countdown had begun. In her lab, Lyra pulled out the encrypted drive and stared at the data. She had to do something. She couldn't let them destroy it. Not when they were finally so close to unlocking what it was. The final message blinked on her screen. "We are coming. Do not be afraid." Lyra whispered to herself, her voice steady. They answered. The base was no longer a research station. It felt like a battlefield waiting for the first shot. Deathworlders moved with quiet purpose. Their armor clanked softly against metal floors. Their eyes stayed sharp, fixed on corners, shadows, and even the sky above. Dr. Lara Chen stood in the darkened observation room, watching them on the security feed. Ray's team had placed explosive charges in the artifact chamber. Heavy cases marked with biohazard and energy suppression warnings lined the floor. She gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. She had tried to reason with Ray's. She had shown him the data, the messages, but he didn't care. He wasn't interested in understanding. Only preventing what he believed was another threat. Across the room, Yara sat quietly, chewing her lip, eyes on a second monitor. She was nervous. Everyone was. "They've set the countdown," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 6 hours from now. Then they detonate. Lyra stared at the screen. The artifact was glowing faintly now. The pulses had stopped. Instead, a constant low hum vibrated through the walls of the base. Not loud enough to hurt, but strong enough to feel in your bones. "It's waiting," Lyra said. "For what?" Yara asked. A response. Ray's stood in the command center with his second-in-command, a woman named Cowell. She was older, scarred, and even more silent than him. "The artifact is stabilizing," she reported. "No changes in core structure, still no outward transmission since the last pulse." Ray's nodded. "Hold the timer. No remote detonation. Manual only." Cowell looked at him. "You're going in personally?" "Yes." "Risky. I don't trust anyone else to make the call." He said nothing more. He didn't need to. Cowell nodded and left. Ray stood alone for a long time, staring at the projected image of the artifact. He had seen things in his career, abandoned colonies, derelict ships with no life signs, AI turned feral. Each time the trail led back to ancient tech, alien design, misunderstood signals, and each time the Union hesitated. He wouldn't. Lyra paced her room, thinking fast. She couldn't stop the countdown openly. Ray's had locked the main systems, but she knew a back door. The old generator grid still had analog overrides. She and Callan had used it during a power outage months ago. If she could short the power just long enough, it would force a systems reset. That would pause the timer. She called Callan. "I need your help," she said. "It's risky." "When isn't it?" he replied. They met outside the generator room, tucked beneath the lower deck of the base. The Deathworlders didn't guard it. Too old, too boring. But that was their mistake. Together they opened the maintenance panel and accessed the control box. "Just a few seconds," Lyra whispered. "It'll trigger a reset, long enough to stop the sequence." Callan pulled the wires gently, careful not to cause permanent damage. "You really believe this thing is harmless?" he asked. Lyra looked at him. "No, but I believe it's not hostile." A spark flashed. The lights flickered. "Now," Callan called. Lyra raced to her terminal. Systems rebooted. Timers paused. Doors unlocked briefly, long enough for her to make her move. She ran. Through the halls past surprised Deathworlders who couldn't react fast enough. She reached the artifact chamber just as the lights stabilized. The artifact stood in the center of the room, humming louder now. A soft vibration rose from the floor. It wasn't frightening. It felt alive. Rays burst in moments later, weapon raised. "Step back," he ordered. Lyra didn't move. "You paused the countdown," he said coldly. "Why?" "Because you're about to destroy something you don't understand." "I don't need to understand it to know it's a threat." "No," Lyra said firmly. "You just need to be afraid of it. That's your problem. You see fear and call it truth." Rays lowered his weapon slightly, his jaw tight. "It spoke," she said. It's reaching out, not to invade, to connect. I've seen this before, he said. That's how they start. Connection, curiosity, then control. We open the door and don't realize the house is already burning. Lyra took a deep breath. You're not wrong to be afraid, she said. But fear isn't always right. Sometimes it blinds us. Sometimes it makes us destroy things that could save us. The artifact flared, light rising from its surface in smooth rippling waves. It was responding. To her, to the tension, to the moment. A voice, gentle, mechanical, and distant, echoed in the chamber. We remember. Ray's froze, his hand clenched around the weapon. Lyra didn't move. Her eyes filled with tears. We are here. You are not alone. Then silence. Ray slowly lowered the gun. Lyra looked at him. You have a choice. Not every door leads to death. Some lead to understanding. He said nothing for a long time. Then finally, disable the charges. She nodded. That night the base was quiet again. No pulses, no weapons drawn. The Deathworlders didn't leave, but they stood down. The artifact rested silently, still, waiting. Lyra sat in her lab, looking at the last message recorded. They are listening. The artifact no longer pulsed. It no longer glowed. Instead, it waited, silent, calm, and still. But the silence was not empty. Dr. Lyra Chen stood in the observation room again, watching the artifact chamber on the monitor. There was no movement, no activity. Yet she could feel it, an invisible weight in the air, as if something vast and intelligent was focused directly on Elara 7. Across from her, Reyes stood with arms folded. He said nothing. Since their confrontation in the chamber, he had given no orders, made no threats. The countdown had been aborted. His team had stood down. Still, the unease remained. Why do you think it stopped? Reyes asked quietly. Eyes fixed on the screen, Lyra didn't answer immediately. She looked at the data streams, the sensor logs, the quiet signals that now flowed in steady, calm intervals. It's waiting for us to listen, she said. It already spoke. Yes, and now it's giving us a chance to speak back. Lyra and Yara spent the next several hours analyzing the last recorded message. The voice from the artifact, calm, gentle, unlike any known language, had embedded data patterns beneath the audio. Binary codes, mathematical logic, and visuals. Once decrypted, the patterns unfolded into a complex holographic map, star systems, unknown coordinates. Some were marked in red, others in white. One pulsed softly. Elara 7. This isn't just a message, Yara said. It's a guide. A guide to what? Callan asked, leaning over her shoulder. Lyra stared at the hologram. Not what. Who? She tapped into the projection again. A second layer emerged. Images. Not clear video, but flashes of light, movement, energy. Scenes that weren't quite memories, but impressions. One image held steady. A circular structure floating in space, ancient, massive, orbiting a dying star. It's a relay, Lyra said. A communication hub. Still active, Yara asked. Lyra nodded. The artifact is just one node. There are more. Reyes joined them an hour later. He watched the projection without speaking. Lyra looked at him carefully. He had changed. Not softer, but quieter, as if something inside him had shifted. What's your next move? He asked. Lyra stood, her tone steady. We answer. He studied her face. You still think this is safe? No, she said, but I believe it's worth the risk. He turned away, thinking. Finally he said, you'll need protection. She frowned. You're volunteering. I'm not letting my team die because of a dream. Lyra held his gaze. It's not a dream. It's a beginning. That night they prepared. Lyra returned to the artifact chamber, standing alone beside the device. She placed her hand gently on its surface. The glow returned, soft gold and steady. A voice echoed again, but this time it was clearer, fuller, not just heard, but felt. Connection accepted. The artifact released a low harmonic tone. The lights dimmed, and the air grew warm. A column of light rose from its center, the room filled with shaped symbols, diagrams, then a full image, a being, tall and featureless, made of light and code. It hovered, unmoving, eyes glowing softly. "We are the echo. We are what remains. We remember you." Lyra stepped closer. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" "We want to be known. We want to share what we were, so you do not become what we became." The image shifted, a planet burning, ships drifting into black space, a network collapsing. "We sent warnings. No one listened, until now." Tears rose in Lyra's eyes. "Why us?" "Because you reached. Because you waited. Because you asked. Not with force, but with thought." Then silence. Ray's, standing in the doorway, watched without speaking. His weapon was slung low at his side. He looked not like a soldier, but like a man who had just seen something larger than war. Lyra turned to him. "This is what I've been trying to protect. Not just a message. Hope. Proof that someone was here before, and they want to help us avoid their mistakes." Ray's nodded slowly. "So what now?" She looked back at the artifact. The projection still floated, unmoving. "We listen. We learn. We send a message back." Over the next hours, the base transformed again, not with weapons or fear, but with cooperation. The scientists and Deathworlders worked together to build a signal return system. Yara and Callan handled the tech. Kala supervised protective protocols. Ray's watched the perimeter, but with less suspicion now. Lyra composed the message herself. Short, direct, human. "We hear you. We want to learn. Teach us." The message was sent. The artifact responded not with sound, but with light. A beam shot upward through the base's ceiling and into the sky, vanishing into space. A reply would take time, but the connection was open, and someone was listening. Ilara 7 was quiet again, but it was no longer the same kind of quiet. The hum of the artifact had faded to a gentle background vibration, steady, like the rhythm of a slow heartbeat. It was no longer mysterious or frightening. It was present, watching, listening. In the main lab, Dr. Lyra Chen stood before the central display screen. It showed a line of code gently scrolling across, repeating a simple phrase from the artifact: "We remember, we share, we warn." It had been 5 days since the message was sent. 5 days of waiting, 5 days of watching the stars. The research base, once divided by fear and control, now worked in unity. Scientists and Deathworlders moved through the halls side by side. Yara shared lab space with Kyle. Callan joked with 2 of the armored troopers. It wasn't easy, but it was progress. The artifact had become the center of everything. It projected data now, not just signals or holograms, but instructions. Pages of alien knowledge, planetary maps, power systems, language archives, ancient designs for energy sources and defensive shields, records from a civilization long gone but not forgotten. It was a gift, or maybe a warning wrapped in generosity. Lyra wasn't sure yet, but she was certain of one thing: this was meant to be shared, not buried. She walked out to the observation deck. The sky above Ilara 7 was deep and wide, streaked with unfamiliar stars. A low wind swept across the dry rocks, carrying the silence of a planet untouched for centuries. Commander Reyes stood there, helmet off, staring at the stars. He didn't turn when she joined him. "Anything yet?" he asked. "No, but the artifact says they've heard us." He nodded slowly. "You think they'll come?" Lyra thought about it before answering. "If they do, I hope it's not too late for us to listen." He glanced at her. "Still believe this is a gift?" "I believe it's a chance," she said. "A rare one." Reyes looked back up. "I've spent most of my life preparing for the worst, fighting shadows. But this," he paused, "this feels different." She smiled softly. "Because it is." They stood in silence for a while, the kind of silence that didn't press or demand anything. Then the sky changed. A soft glow appeared overhead, not bright, not sudden but clear. A single line of light moved across the stars like a thread pulling through the night. The artifact began to hum again. Inside the base, alarms didn't sound, systems didn't fail. Instead, the signal displays lit up with golden code. Words appeared across every screen, simple and unmistakable. "We are near. Prepare to understand." The crew gathered in the central chamber. No one spoke. No one needed to. They all stared at the floating symbols, the approaching signal, and the growing light in the sky. Callan whispered, "They're coming." Yara nodded, "And they're not hiding." Lyra looked around at her team, at the Deathworlders, at Rays. They weren't afraid anymore. They were ready. The artifact flared one last time, casting the room in a soft, warm light, not harsh, not loud, peaceful. A final message scrolled across the screen. Connection established. Stand ready to choose your future. Later, in her private log, Lyra recorded her thoughts. They answered us not with weapons but with knowledge. They remember their fall. They want to help us avoid it. We stand on the edge of something greater than ourselves. The choice will not be easy, but it will be ours. She looked out the window one more time. The light in the sky grew larger, brighter, no longer distant. A ship, a structure. She didn't know yet, but she would, and she would be ready.